Thank you there to our news reading team. And now we take a break from the news desk for a special interview slot. And I'm glad to be joined here in the Llanelli Talking Newspaper studio by the Reverend Eldon Phillips. And Eldon, of course, is a familiar character to everybody in Llanelli. I think he's a familiar face for his work as chaplain to the Scarlets. He also works in the Llanelli benefice and that of Bury Port and Pool as well. He's also chaplain to Singleton Hospital. I think in the past he's also been captain of Machynnis Golf Club. So he's a very busy man. Eldon, tell me, you're off to India, as I understand it, and next year, is it?
I'm off again, Robert. I'm going to India on January the 7th, January the 8th. For just over 2 weeks, and I'm very excited. I'm very much looking forward to it as well.
Oh, that's great. Now, I've been looking up the sort of archives, and I see that you actually first went out to India back in 2009, I think. And tell me, what was the place called? Where exactly is it in India?
The very southern tip of India. Last time I split my time. I was there a little bit longer than 2 weeks last time. I was there for 4.5 weeks in 2009, and deliberately split my time between two cities, two southern Indian cities. If you can think of the southern tip of India, the Horn of India, the very, very southern tip. In fact, the city of Llanelli, where I first stayed, is literally 30 to 40 miles from the tip of India, where it joins, across the Straits of Sri Lanka, of course. Llanelli, I was there for about 3 weeks last time, a city of 500,000 people, and it was the most amazing experience. And then for the next 2 weeks before I came home, I went to another city, an overnight train journey along. I'll tell you more about that later on. A city called Vellore. And Vellore is very well known because it's got India's third largest hospital, and also it's got India's second largest medical school. So you can understand the importance of that city. And that's why I went to India, really, because I was working at the time, as I am now, in Singleton Hospital in Swansea, doing chaplaincy. And I noticed one day in a USPG, United Society for the Propagation of the Gospel, which is a Christian missionary development organisation. And they were advertising placements, basically, month plus placements for priests and ministers and clergy and so forth. But it had to be related to what you were doing in this country, because you had to report back and develop what you'd learned, hopefully, when you went on your travels back in your role here in the United Kingdom. And so it was with that idea of going to India, really to look at their healthcare systems, and specifically to work in their hospitals, to see how the healthcare worked, to see how chaplaincy worked, to see how life generally was like, and provision and facilities and environment were like. So that got me going. And you know what it's like? A lot of things that happen in people's lives, they happen quite coincidentally, and not too well planned. So I just filled a form in. And then the next thing I heard, yes, we'll accept you, we'll pay for your flight. We'll arrange your accommodation. We'll arrange your itinerary. What you do there is very much your own business, really. So off I went. I'd never been to India before,
right?
And I went in February, beginning of March. It was the end of February, beginning of March. Now I learnt my lesson immediately, because, Robert, when I got off the plane in the city of Trivandrum, which is the airport, the international airport that serves southern India. Well, and this, of course, now was February time in this country. And it's the coolish period in India. Well, when I got off the plane, it was 9 o'clock in the morning. It was like walking into an oven. It literally was, because we got off at the tarmac. And I've been to the Middle East a few times before. But to experience heat like that. And the heat for the 5 to 6 weeks that I was there was quite unbearable. Yeah. My accommodation in the city of Llanelli was in a residential deaf school. And I had a room with no windows, not deliberately, but to keep the mosquitoes out, you see, and 2 fans. And I just hoped and prayed that the fans wouldn't go out. They had to be on all the time, throughout the night. Because if the fans were off, I think that's the end of me. It's the end of me. But they kept on going, which in India is quite remarkable anyway. But it was, and in the night, you see, just to give you an idea, in the night, the temperatures got down to about 28 to 30 degrees centigrade. But it was extremely humid heat, In the day, it was touching 40 every day. So I got through this. I don't know how I got through it, but I got through it. And it was much the same in Vellore, where I spent the next 2 weeks after the epic train journey. And in Vellore, of course, I was staying in slightly more palatial surroundings. And it was part of the medical school, and it was a guest house, a guest room in the guest house attached to the medical school in Vellore. And that was luxurious compared to my 3.5 weeks in Llanelli.
It must have been quite a fact-finding mission for you to do this out in India, because we all see the pictures of India, what a bustling place it is, and very different to working as you do today up in Singleton Hospital.
Yeah, very different. And the first thing I noticed in Llanelli was that the traditional dress of every woman. You know, I didn't go into the large cities. I didn't go to Calcutta or Delhi or Mumbai. But I didn't see any woman in the time I was there, in Vellore or in Llanelli, dressed in Western clothes. So that was the first thing I noticed. The second thing I noticed as well, after some time there, was the fact that I was the only white face the entire time. Not just in Llanelli, but in Vellore as well, which surprised me. Because Vellore is slightly more international city because of the medical school and the hospital there. So that came as a shock.
That was quite an eye-opener. So you're going back now in January or February?
I'm deliberately going in January.
So it'll be a bit cooler.
It's a bit cooler. That's a deliberate ploy.
And is it back to the same place then? So
well, yeah, sort of. It is. I'm going back to Llanelli again. And I'm excited about. I'll probably stay in the same room, so the cockroaches and I will reacquaint ourselves. But I'm really looking forward to going back to the hospitals I worked in Llanelli. The hospitals in Llanelli are many. There's not just one general hospital. There was a number of small hospitals. A couple of these were general hospitals. There was a maternity hospital. There was an eye hospital. You know, they had the small sort of clinic-type hospitals. And the two I worked in were Christian mission hospitals. But the important thing to remember is that 95% of the patients going to these Christian mission hospitals were Hindus.
Right.
Because that's the population. That's the population. So there was no distinction at all yet. And these hospitals were small. 2 wards, both of them, operating theatre, X-ray machine out of the 1950s, to be honest with you. You know, outpatients, a 24-hour GP presence there. Because that's the way it works.
Because that's the way it works. You're going out now, and I know you'd want to mention before we finish this very short interview, perhaps we'll have you back when you come back from India and you can tell us a little bit more about what went on. But I know you particularly want to thank a number of people who have been helping you, supporting you for this trip. And I believe you've been practicing having a bit of curry, I think.
Oh, I'm a big curry person. I go to the greatest Indian restaurant in Western Europe, the Ali Raj in Trinity Road, Llanelli. But I was glad to do this, Rob, because I'm going back to Llanelli, but I'm also spending just over a week in a place called, I hope I get this right now, it's called Nazareth, the same as the biblical town. It's called Nazareth, and it's about 50 miles east of Llanelli. And I'm going there deliberately because there's a group of Anglican nuns who have established a very, very world-famous centre there. If you could appreciate the idea of Mother Teresa's Sisters of Mercy in Calcutta, who work on the streets of Calcutta, transpose it to the countryside. That's what these nuns do. They do that, and they work in. They have a catchment of villages, and they really do help the poor, the impoverished, the sick. You know, and so I'm looking forward to that. Yes. People have been very kind because I've had to, this time my funding wasn't quite as good as last time, because last time my flight was paid for. This time I had to pay for everything myself, and I have to give a gift to the places I stay. So the curry night in the Ali Raj was a brilliant fundraising event, and I thank everyone for coming to it as well.
Oh, that's great. On behalf of the Llanelli Talking Newspaper, The Blind, we wish you all the best on your journey. Have a safe trip.
Thank you.
And I hope you call back in and see us again and tell us what happened. Thank you, Eldon.
Thank you, Robert.